Most people are not living their life. They are managing other people's reactions. They think about what others will say, how they will be judged, and whether they will be accepted. So they hesitate, they hold back, and they slowly become strangers to their own goals. Not because they lack ability, but because they gave their attention away. The truth is simple. The moment you start living for approval, you stop living for yourself. You begin shaping your decisions around opinions that change every day. One person praises you, another criticizes you, and your direction keeps shifting. Your energy becomes scattered, and your confidence weakens. This audiobook is about taking that control back, learning to focus your attention, your time, and your effort on your own growth. When you stop chasing approval, you gain clarity. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you gain peace. And when your focus returns to you, your life finally begins to move forward. Chapter 1. Why seeking approval weakens your direction. Seeking approval weakens your direction because it shifts your focus from action to reaction. Philosophy teaches that direction requires stability, and stability comes from internal decisions. When your choices depend on how others may respond, your path constantly changes. You begin planning around opinions instead of purpose. Instead of asking what is right for your growth, you ask what will be accepted. This small shift seems harmless, but over time it erodes clarity. You hesitate before starting, you second-guess your plans, and your confidence depends on external responses. A life built on reaction cannot move steadily forward. Approval-seeking also creates hesitation. Philosophy teaches that progress requires movement before certainty. When you wait for approval, you delay action. You rehearse conversations in your mind, imagining reactions that have not even happened. This mental preparation replaces real effort. Days pass in thinking instead of doing. The longer you wait, the heavier the decision feels. What could have been a small step becomes overwhelming. Direction weakens not because the path was unclear, but because action was postponed. Another effect of approval-seeking is scattered priorities. Philosophy teaches that direction depends on consistent focus. When you try to satisfy multiple people, your priorities shift constantly. One person values safety, another values risk. One encourages you, another doubts you. You start adjusting yourself to fit each expectation. Over time, you lose a stable standard. Without a stable standard, decisions become confused. Confusion slows progress. Your energy spreads thin across many expectations, leaving little strength for your own goals. Approval also weakens your ability to trust yourself. Philosophy teaches that self-trust grows through independent decision-making. When every decision is checked against others' reactions, you stop listening to your own judgment. You begin to believe others understand your life better than you do. This belief creates dependence. Dependence reduces initiative. Reduced initiative limits experience. Without experience, confidence cannot grow. Direction requires confidence, and confidence requires trusting your own choices. Seeking approval also makes you overly sensitive to criticism. Philosophy teaches that criticism is unavoidable in meaningful effort. When approval becomes your emotional foundation, criticism feels like rejection instead of feedback. You start avoiding actions that might invite disagreement. Avoidance protects comfort, but blocks growth. Over time, your path becomes smaller. You choose safety over progress repeatedly. Safety without growth leads to stagnation. Direction fades quietly. Another hidden consequence is decision fatigue. Philosophy teaches that too many opinions overwhelm clarity. When you constantly wonder how others will react, each decision becomes heavy. Simple choices require excessive thought. Mental energy drains quickly. Drained energy weakens motivation. Weak motivation reduces persistence. You become tired not from work, but from anticipation of judgment. Direction requires energy, and approval-seeking consumes it. Approval-seeking also distorts your goals. Philosophy teaches that goals should align with values. When you chase approval, goals begin aligning with expectations instead. You choose careers, habits, or lifestyles that look impressive rather than meaningful. At first, you feel accepted. Over time, you feel empty. Emptiness creates confusion. Confusion weakens commitment. Without commitment, direction collapses. Another problem is delayed growth. Philosophy teaches that growth requires mistakes. Approval-seeking avoids mistakes because mistakes invite judgment. You try to appear capable instead of becoming capable. Appearance replaces learning. Learning slows. Without learning, progress stalls. You remain where you are, not because you lack ability, but because you avoided imperfect action. Approval also makes your confidence unstable. Philosophy teaches that external validation is unpredictable. Praise today can become criticism tomorrow. When your confidence depends on reactions, it rises and falls constantly. This instability makes planning difficult. You act boldly when encouraged and retreat when questioned. Direction requires consistency, and inconsistency breaks momentum. Another effect is comparison. Philosophy teaches that approval often comes from comparison. You measure your progress against others to feel acceptable. Comparison shifts attention away from improvement. Instead of asking how to grow, you ask how you appear. Appearance-focused thinking weakens effort. Effort determines results. Without effort, direction weakens. Approval-seeking also damages authenticity. Philosophy teaches that authenticity aligns action with belief. When you adjust behavior to please everyone, authenticity fades. You begin performing instead of living. Performance requires constant monitoring. Monitoring drains attention. Without attention, focus disappears. Direction needs focus. Another consequence is reduced resilience. Philosophy teaches that resilience grows from standing by your decisions. If every disagreement makes you reconsider, resilience cannot develop. You change direction frequently to avoid discomfort. Frequent changes reset progress repeatedly. Without sustained effort, results cannot accumulate. Approval-seeking also prevents leadership. Philosophy teaches that leadership requires clarity of conviction. If you rely on others' opinions to decide, you cannot guide yourself, let alone others. Leadership begins internally. Without internal direction, external influence dominates your path. Another impact is emotional instability. Philosophy teaches that emotional peace depends on internal standards. Approval-seeking ties mood to external reactions. Positive feedback creates relief. Negative feedback creates distress. Emotional swings exhaust mental energy. Exhaustion weakens persistence. Approval also reduces creativity. Philosophy teaches that creativity requires freedom to experiment. Fear of judgment limits experimentation. You choose safe ideas instead of original ones. Safe ideas rarely create growth. Growth requires risk. Another problem is procrastination. Philosophy teaches that fear of judgment delays action. You wait for the perfect moment to avoid criticism. The perfect moment never arrives. Delay becomes habit. Habit becomes stagnation. Finally, seeking approval weakens your direction because it transfers control of your life to people who are not responsible for your future. Philosophy teaches that direction comes from commitment to purpose, not acceptance. When you stop waiting for permission and begin acting on values, clarity returns. Confidence stabilizes, momentum builds. Your path becomes steady, not because everyone agrees, but because you finally decided. Chapter 2. How other people's opinions control your decisions. Other people's opinions begin to control your decisions the moment you start imagining their reactions before you imagine your own goals. Philosophy teaches that attention shapes priority. When your attention is on approval, your mind stops asking what is meaningful and starts asking what is acceptable. You replay conversations in your head, predicting criticism that may never come. That prediction changes your behavior before reality even has a chance to. Slowly, your choices are no longer based on direction, but on anticipation. You begin adjusting your path for people who are not living your life, yet they influence it daily. Opinions gain power when they become emotional. Philosophy teaches that a thought becomes influential when it affects how you feel. A stranger's comment would normally be small, but once it triggers insecurity, it grows in importance. You start remembering it, repeating it, and shaping decisions around it. Instead of acting freely, you act cautiously. Your mind becomes occupied with avoiding negative reactions rather than pursuing meaningful progress. Emotion turns opinion into control. Another way opinions control decisions is through fear of embarrassment. Philosophy teaches that social discomfort can feel stronger than practical loss. You may avoid opportunities not because they are wrong, but because they expose you to being judged. You hesitate to start a project, change careers, or express ideas because you imagine others watching. The fear is rarely about the action itself. It is about how it might look. When appearance becomes more important than direction, growth slows. Opinions also control decisions by shaping identity. Philosophy teaches that repeated external feedback forms self-perception. If you hear often that something is unrealistic, risky, or impractical, you begin to internalize it. Even when you know your intention is valid, doubt appears. You start questioning your own reasoning. The voice of others becomes louder than your own judgment. Eventually, you act according to their expectations rather than your understanding. Another influence comes from the desire to belong. Philosophy teaches that humans seek acceptance naturally. Belonging provides emotional safety. But when belonging depends on conformity, decisions lose independence. You adjust your actions to match the group, even if the group's direction is not yours. The comfort of acceptance replaces the pursuit of purpose. Over time, you no longer notice the difference between your wants and their expectations. Opinions also create hesitation through over-explanation. Philosophy teaches that when you feel the need to justify every decision, confidence weakens. You start explaining your goals repeatedly, seeking reassurance. Each explanation invites more opinions. More opinions create confusion. Confusion delays action. Instead of moving forward, you remain stuck in discussion. Movement stops while validation is pursued. Another control mechanism is comparison. Philosophy teaches that comparison shifts attention from progress to perception. You evaluate your decisions based on how they rank socially rather than how they align personally. If something looks less impressive, you abandon it even if it suits you. If something looks impressive, you pursue it even if it does not. Decisions become guided by image rather than meaning. Opinions also affect risk tolerance. Philosophy teaches that meaningful change often appears uncertain. When others emphasize risk, your mind exaggerates danger. You become cautious not because risk is real, but because criticism is anticipated. Fear of being wrong in public feels heavier than being wrong privately. As a result, you choose safe options repeatedly. Safety preserves approval, but limits development. Another effect is delayed commitment. Philosophy teaches that clear direction requires decision. When you wait for consensus, commitment weakens. You keep adjusting plans based on feedback. Each new opinion resets your certainty. Without commitment, effort is inconsistent. Inconsistent effort prevents results. Lack of results reinforces doubt, creating a cycle of indecision. Opinions also control emotional reactions. Philosophy teaches that when you depend on others' perspectives, your mood follows them. Praise lifts you temporarily, criticism lowers you immediately. Emotional dependence makes consistent effort difficult. You act strongly one day and hesitate the next. Direction becomes unstable because emotions are externally guided. Another influence appears in small choices. Philosophy teaches that major changes begin with minor habits. You choose clothing, speech, hobbies, and interests based on approval. These small adjustments seem harmless, but accumulate. Over time, your lifestyle reflects expectations more than preference. You adapt so gradually that you hardly notice you have changed. Opinions also reduce authenticity. Philosophy teaches that authenticity requires alignment between belief and action. When you alter behavior to prevent judgment, alignment breaks. Inner conflict increases. Conflict drains mental energy. Without energy, motivation weakens. Weak motivation slows progress. Another problem is reliance on reassurance. Philosophy teaches that repeated reassurance weakens self-trust. Each time you seek confirmation, you teach your mind that your judgment is insufficient. Insufficient trust produces hesitation. Hesitation blocks initiative. Without initiative, growth stalls. Opinions can also distort perception of failure. Philosophy teaches that failure is part of learning, but if failure invites criticism, you begin avoiding situations where mistakes are visible. You limit effort to protect image. Protection prevents experience. Without experience, skill cannot improve. Another effect is inconsistency. Philosophy teaches that consistent action builds momentum. When decisions shift according to feedback, consistency disappears. Momentum fades. Progress slows. You appear uncertain not because you lack ability, but because you lack stable direction. Finally, other people's opinions control your decisions when you forget responsibility. Philosophy teaches that you bear the consequences of your life, not the observers. People may comment freely, but they do not live the outcomes. When you reclaim responsibility, decisions simplify. You listen respectfully, but choose independently. Direction strengthens because it belongs to you again. Chapter 3. The hidden cost of explaining yourself to everyone. The hidden cost of explaining yourself to everyone begins with a quiet loss of energy. Philosophy teaches that attention is a limited resource, and every explanation spends it. When you constantly justify your decisions, you are not using your mental strength to build your future. You are using it to defend your present. You rehearse arguments, anticipate questions, and shape your words carefully so no one misunderstands you. By the end, you feel exhausted before you even begin the real work. The goal has not drained you, the explanations have. Over time, your focus shifts away from action and toward defense. Another cost is delayed progress. Philosophy teaches that clarity grows through doing, not convincing. When you pause to explain every decision, you wait for agreement before moving forward. Agreement rarely comes from everyone. Each conversation introduces more doubt. Doubt slows action. You remain stuck not because you lack direction, but because you are trying to secure understanding first. While you are explaining, time moves. Opportunities pass quietly. Your life pauses for conversations that change nothing practical. Explaining yourself also weakens confidence. Philosophy teaches that confidence grows from decisive behavior. When you repeatedly justify your choices, you send yourself a hidden message. Your decision is not enough on its own. You begin relying on approval to feel certain. Certainty becomes conditional. Conditional certainty collapses under disagreement. Instead of standing firm, you question yourself at every objection. Your confidence becomes dependent, not grounded. Another hidden cost is inviting unnecessary opinions. Philosophy teaches that explanation opens the door to interpretation. Once you explain, others feel permitted to evaluate, correct, and advise. Some advice is useful, but most reflects their fears, not your direction. The more you explain, the more perspectives you receive. Too many perspectives create confusion. Confusion weakens commitment. Commitment is essential for progress. Explaining also shifts responsibility. Philosophy teaches that decisions require ownership. When you explain excessively, you begin sharing responsibility with listeners. You want them to understand, so they support you emotionally. But emotional support tied to understanding makes your commitment fragile. If they disagree, you hesitate. Your path becomes influenced by people who are not accountable for its outcome. Another cost is emotional dependence. Philosophy teaches that constant validation creates reliance. Each explanation seeks reassurance. Reassurance feels comforting, but temporary. When reassurance fades, anxiety returns. You explain again to restore calm. This cycle traps you. Instead of acting with inner stability, you act to maintain external comfort. Explaining yourself also damages authenticity. Philosophy teaches that authenticity requires internal clarity, not universal approval. When you adjust explanations to suit different listeners, your message changes. You soften intentions to avoid conflict. Over time, you stop speaking truthfully even to yourself. You shape your decisions around how they will be received, rather than what they mean. Another hidden effect is overthinking. Philosophy teaches that explanation forces you to analyze beyond necessity. You search for perfect wording and perfect logic. Perfect logic rarely satisfies everyone. The more you think, the more objections you imagine. Imagined objections create hesitation. Hesitation delays action. Action delayed repeatedly becomes inaction. Explaining also magnifies criticism. Philosophy teaches that defending invites debate. When you present reasons, others test them. Testing leads to disagreement. Disagreement leads to self-doubt if you rely on acceptance. A simple decision becomes a discussion. A discussion becomes a conflict. Conflict drains motivation. Instead of focusing on execution, you focus on defending. Another cost is loss of privacy. Philosophy teaches that personal direction needs protected space. When every plan is explained, it becomes public before it is stable. Early ideas are fragile. External reactions influence them prematurely. You abandon ideas not because they were wrong, but because reactions discouraged you. Growth requires quiet beginnings. Explaining yourself also prevents learning through experience. Philosophy teaches that understanding comes from action. If you spend more time talking about what you will do than doing it, progress slows. Words create a feeling of movement without real change. You feel productive, but results remain unchanged. Another hidden cost is resentment. Philosophy teaches that constant justification creates emotional fatigue. Over time, you feel misunderstood even when no one intended harm. You start resenting conversations you once welcomed. Relationships strain, not because of disagreement, but because of repeated defense. The need to be understood replaces peace. Explaining also weakens boundaries. Philosophy teaches that boundaries exist without permission. When you justify every boundary, it appears negotiable. Others challenge it more. You defend again. The cycle continues. Boundaries lose strength because they depend on explanation rather than decision. Another consequence is indecision. Philosophy teaches that repeated discussion delays commitment. Each explanation keeps options open. Open options prevent decisive action. Without decision, effort scatters. Scattered effort produces minimal progress. You feel busy but move little. Explaining yourself also reduces presence. Philosophy teaches that attention in the present drives performance. When your mind stays on what others think, you cannot fully engage in your work. Distraction lowers quality. Lower quality reduces results. Results matter more than approval. Finally, the hidden cost of explaining yourself to everyone is loss of direction. Philosophy teaches that direction comes from internal clarity. When every step requires justification, clarity weakens. You begin living reactively instead of intentionally. The moment you act without needing universal understanding, energy returns, focus sharpens, progress begins. Chapter 4. Learning to detach from judgment and criticism. Learning to detach from judgment and criticism begins with understanding that judgment is inevitable wherever effort exists. Philosophy teaches that visibility invites opinion. The moment you act, someone will interpret what you did through their own experiences, fears, and preferences. Detachment does not mean pretending criticism does not exist. It means refusing to let every opinion shape your emotional state. When you stop expecting universal approval, you stop feeling surprised by disagreement. Acceptance of judgment reduces its emotional impact. Reduced impact restores focus. Focus keeps your direction steady. Another step in detachment is separating information from emotion. Philosophy teaches that criticism often contains two parts: the message and the tone. The tone may be harsh, dismissive, or careless, but the message may still hold something useful. When you react only to the tone, you lose clarity. When you calmly examine the content, you regain control. Detachment allows you to evaluate criticism logically instead of personally. Logic filters what matters and discards what does not. Criticism feels painful because it touches identity. Philosophy teaches that when you attach your worth to your actions, every comment feels like a verdict about who you are. Detachment comes from recognizing that behavior and identity are different. A decision can be wrong without you being inadequate. This distinction protects self-respect. Protected self-respect reduces defensiveness. Reduced defensiveness allows learning. Learning strengthens growth. Another part of detachment is understanding projection. Philosophy teaches that people often criticize based on their own fears and limits. A person afraid of risk discourages risk. A person uncomfortable with change questions ambition. Their reaction reveals their perspective, not your potential. Recognizing projection prevents internalizing unnecessary doubt. You listen, but you do not absorb everything. Detachment also requires reducing overinterpretation. Philosophy teaches that the mind magnifies brief comments into lasting meaning. One remark becomes a mental replay repeated for days. Detachment interrupts this loop. You acknowledge the comment, extract any value, and release it. Releasing prevents rumination. Rumination drains energy. Energy preserved supports progress. Another step is practicing emotional pause. Philosophy teaches that immediate reaction strengthens emotional attachment. When criticism appears, pause before responding. This pause allows emotion to settle. A settled mind evaluates more accurately. Accurate evaluation prevents regret. Detachment grows through patience. Detachment also strengthens when you build internal standards. Philosophy teaches that when your values are clear, external judgment loses authority. You compare feedback to your principles, not your insecurities. If feedback aligns, you adjust. If not, you continue. Internal standards create stability. Stability protects direction. Another important practice is limiting exposure to unnecessary opinions. Philosophy teaches that constant feedback overwhelms clarity. You do not need everyone's perspective to move forward. Selective listening preserves focus. Focus improves performance. Performance builds confidence. Confidence weakens the influence of judgment. Detachment grows through experience. Philosophy teaches that repeated exposure to criticism reduces fear. The first time feels heavy, the 10th time feels manageable. The mind learns that disagreement does not stop progress. Familiarity reduces emotional intensity. Reduced intensity strengthens resilience. Another step is redefining criticism as feedback. Philosophy teaches that feedback is information, not a verdict. When you treat criticism as data, you become curious instead of defensive. Curiosity supports improvement. Improvement increases competence. Competence stabilizes confidence. Detachment also involves releasing the need to respond. Philosophy teaches that not every comment requires explanation. Silence is often clarity. Responding to everything keeps you emotionally entangled. Choosing when to respond preserves mental energy. Energy supports productivity. Another part of detachment is accepting misunderstanding. Philosophy teaches that some people will never fully understand your decisions because they live different experiences. Trying to convince everyone delays action. Acceptance of misunderstanding frees attention. Freed attention strengthens focus. Detachment also protects creativity. Philosophy teaches that creative work requires experimentation. Fear of criticism limits experimentation. Limitation weakens innovation. When you detach from judgment, you allow mistakes. Mistakes produce learning. Learning produces originality. Another step is strengthening self-respect. Philosophy teaches that self-respect stabilizes emotional reactions. When you value your effort honestly, criticism cannot erase it instantly. You evaluate feedback without losing confidence. Confidence remains steady. Steady confidence supports persistence. Detachment also requires forgiving yourself quickly. Philosophy teaches that internal criticism can be harsher than external. When you release self-attack, outside judgment loses power. You correct mistakes calmly. Calm correction improves performance. Finally, learning to detach from judgment and criticism means reclaiming control of your attention. Philosophy teaches that opinions are unavoidable, but influence is optional. You listen selectively, adjust wisely, and continue steadily. When your focus stays on growth rather than approval, judgment becomes background noise instead of a barrier. Chapter 5. Protecting your energy and attention. Protecting your energy and attention begins with recognizing that both are limited. Philosophy teaches that time is not the only resource a person spends. Focus is equally valuable. Every conversation, worry, argument, and distraction quietly consumes mental strength. Many people feel tired not because they worked hard, but because their attention was pulled in too many directions. When your mind jumps constantly between concerns, it cannot concentrate deeply on what matters. Protecting energy means choosing carefully where your focus goes each day. Another important step is understanding that attention follows interest by default. Philosophy teaches that whatever you repeatedly think about grows in importance. If you constantly monitor other people's lives, your own plans lose priority. You begin reacting instead of creating. The mind naturally attaches to noise unless guided. Guiding your attention requires intention. You decide what deserves your thought and what does not. Without this decision, your energy is spent automatically. Protecting energy also means limiting unnecessary conversations. Philosophy teaches that not every discussion improves your life. Some conversations repeat problems without solutions. Others revolve around complaints, gossip, or comparisons. After such interactions, you feel mentally drained. The drain occurs because your brain processed emotion without progress. Learning to step away politely preserves clarity. Silence often restores more strength than participation. Another way to protect attention is by controlling information intake. Philosophy teaches that the mind absorbs what it repeatedly sees and hears. Constant exposure to negative news, criticism, and comparison fills mental space with tension. That tension remains even after the moment ends. Your focus weakens because part of your mind is still occupied. Choosing what you consume mentally protects concentration. Calm input produces calm thinking. Protecting your energy also requires clear priorities. Philosophy teaches that when everything feels important, nothing receives full effort. You start multiple tasks and finish few. Partial effort produces weak results. Weak results create frustration. Frustration drains motivation. Identifying one meaningful objective at a time allows deeper engagement. Deep engagement strengthens progress. Progress restores energy. Another key practice is saying no without guilt. Philosophy teaches that every yes to something unnecessary becomes a no to something meaningful. When you accept every request, your schedule fills with obligations that do not serve your direction. You feel busy, but unfulfilled. Refusing respectfully preserves time and focus. Boundaries protect energy more effectively than motivation. Protecting attention also means managing emotional reactions. Philosophy teaches that strong emotions consume mental capacity. Anger, worry, and resentment occupy your thoughts long after the event ends. You replay situations repeatedly. This mental replay steals attention from your goals. Learning to release minor conflicts quickly frees mental space. Peace supports productivity. Another step is protecting your mornings and evenings. Philosophy teaches that the first and last moments of the day shape mental clarity. Beginning the day with distraction weakens focus early. Ending with stimulation prevents mental rest. Creating simple routines at these times stabilizes thinking. Stable thinking improves decision-making throughout the day. Protecting your energy also involves limiting comparison. Philosophy teaches that comparison drains attention by shifting it outward. You begin measuring your progress against others instead of improving your own process. This constant evaluation creates anxiety. Anxiety weakens focus. Focusing on your own improvement restores calm effort. Calm effort builds sustainable growth. Another important habit is single tasking. Philosophy teaches that divided attention reduces quality. When you attempt multiple tasks simultaneously, each receives partial effort. Partial effort demands more time and produces weaker results. Concentrating on one task strengthens efficiency. Efficiency conserves energy. Conserved energy increases endurance. Protecting attention also requires rest. Philosophy teaches that rest is not wasted time, but restoration. Continuous effort without recovery lowers mental performance. A tired mind reacts emotionally and thinks poorly. Intentional breaks renew concentration. Renewed concentration improves effectiveness. Rest strengthens discipline rather than weakening it. Another part of protection is reducing overthinking. Philosophy teaches that repeated analysis of minor decisions wastes mental strength. Simple choices do not require endless debate. Deciding quickly preserves attention for important matters. Clarity grows when thought is reserved for meaningful problems. Protecting energy also means managing digital distractions. Philosophy teaches that constant notifications fragment awareness. Each interruption forces the brain to restart its focus. Restarting repeatedly drains mental stamina. Limiting interruptions allows deeper thinking. Deep thinking produces higher quality work. Another important practice is aligning actions with values. Philosophy teaches that inner conflict consumes energy. When your actions contradict your beliefs, your mind struggles internally. This struggle reduces clarity and motivation. Acting according to your values simplifies decisions. Simplicity preserves attention. Finally, protecting your energy and attention is an act of self-respect. Philosophy teaches that where you place your focus becomes your life. When you choose carefully, your days feel purposeful. When you give attention freely, your days feel scattered. By directing your mental energy toward growth instead of distraction, you create steady progress and lasting clarity. Protecting your energy also means recognizing that not every problem requires your involvement. Philosophy teaches that many conflicts continue because too many people feel responsible for fixing what they did not create. When you step into every disagreement, you absorb tension that was never yours. Your mind begins carrying emotional weight from situations unrelated to your growth. Learning to step back does not make you careless, it makes you selective. Selectivity protects your mental strength. You remain calm while others exhaust themselves reacting to every disturbance. Another important practice is monitoring where your thoughts return repeatedly. Philosophy teaches that recurring thoughts reveal attention leaks. If your mind constantly revisits the same person, conversation, or worry, energy is being drained without progress. The brain treats repeated thought as unfinished business. You feel tired not from effort, but from mental looping. Redirecting attention intentionally breaks this cycle. Each time you gently bring your focus back to meaningful tasks, you reclaim strength. Over time, the mind learns new priorities. Protecting attention also requires emotional boundaries. Philosophy teaches that empathy does not require absorbing another person's emotional state. You can care about someone without carrying their stress. When you internalize every emotion around you, your clarity fades. You begin reacting to moods instead of acting on decisions. Supporting others while maintaining emotional separation keeps your mind stable. Stability strengthens concentration. Another source of energy loss is unresolved decisions. Philosophy teaches that postponed choices occupy mental space. When you delay simple decisions, your brain keeps revisiting them. These mental reminders accumulate and weaken focus. Making small decisions quickly clears cognitive load. A clear mind performs better. Protecting energy sometimes means deciding promptly rather than perfectly. Protecting your energy also means choosing your environment carefully. Philosophy teaches that surroundings influence mental state more than effort alone. Chaotic environments produce scattered thinking. Calm environments support focus. Even small changes, cleaning a workspace or reducing noise, improve concentration. Your mind mirrors your surroundings. Order outside encourages order inside. Another key step is reducing unnecessary self-criticism. Philosophy teaches that constant inner judgment drains motivation. When every action is followed by harsh self-talk, your mind works against you. Instead of improving, you hesitate to avoid mistakes. Gentle correction improves performance more effectively than internal attack. Encouraging thoughts preserve mental stamina. Protecting attention also involves finishing what you start. Philosophy teaches that incomplete tasks create mental residue. Each unfinished activity occupies attention in the background. This background noise lowers clarity. Completing small tasks regularly closes mental loops. Closed loops free focus. A focused mind moves faster and feels lighter. Another important habit is limiting exposure to constant urgency. Philosophy teaches that artificial urgency keeps the mind in alert mode. When everything feels immediate, the brain cannot prioritize properly. You rush but accomplish little. Slowing your pace for meaningful work increases quality. Calm effort produces stronger results than hurried activity. Protecting your energy also requires respecting personal rhythms. Philosophy teaches that each person has natural periods of higher focus. Working with these rhythms increases efficiency. Ignoring them creates resistance. Resistance drains mental strength. Scheduling important tasks during peak focus times conserves energy naturally. Another drain on attention is replaying past events. Philosophy teaches that reflection is useful only when it leads to understanding. Replaying without learning becomes rumination. Rumination keeps emotions active without progress. Letting go of past conversations frees mental space for present effort. Protecting attention also means setting limits on accessibility. Philosophy teaches that constant availability prevents deep thinking. When people can reach you at any moment, your focus fragments repeatedly. Creating periods of uninterrupted work strengthens concentration. Concentration improves performance and satisfaction. Another key element is physical care. Philosophy teaches that mental energy depends partly on physical condition. Poor sleep, irregular meals, and inactivity weaken cognitive clarity. A rested body supports a focused mind. Protecting energy includes respecting basic physical needs. Strength in one area supports strength in the other. Protecting your attention also involves celebrating small progress. Philosophy teaches that recognition of improvement sustains motivation. When you ignore progress, effort feels endless. Noticing completion restores encouragement. Encouragement renews energy. Renewed energy supports consistency. Another practice is reducing mental clutter. Philosophy teaches that too many commitments create internal noise. Simplifying obligations clarifies priorities. Clear priorities guide action. Guided action prevents wasted effort. Simplicity strengthens direction. Finally, protecting your energy and attention means understanding that focus determines outcome. Philosophy teaches that your life follows what repeatedly receives your thought. When you guard your attention carefully, your effort deepens. Deep effort produces meaningful results. Over time, your days feel purposeful because your energy is spent intentionally rather than accidentally. Chapter 6. Building confidence without validation. Building confidence without validation begins with understanding what confidence truly is. Philosophy teaches that confidence is not loudness, popularity, or praise. It is the quiet belief that you can rely on your own decisions. Many people mistake approval for confidence because praise feels reassuring, but reassurance from others disappears quickly. When confidence depends on applause, it rises and falls constantly. Real confidence remains steady because it is built internally, not borrowed externally. The first step toward internal confidence is keeping small promises to yourself. Philosophy teaches that trust forms through repeated reliability. When you say you will do something and you follow through, even in minor tasks, your mind records proof of capability. Each completed action becomes evidence. Evidence builds belief. Over time, you no longer need others to tell you that you are capable. You have demonstrated it to yourself. Another important principle is acting before you feel ready. Philosophy teaches that readiness often follows action, not the other way around. Waiting for confidence delays growth. When you act despite uncertainty, you gain experience. Experience reduces fear. Reduced fear strengthens certainty. Certainty becomes confidence. Action teaches the mind that discomfort is survivable. Building confidence also requires accepting mistakes calmly. Philosophy teaches that perfection is not the foundation of confidence, resilience is. When mistakes occur, harsh self-judgment weakens belief. Calm reflection strengthens learning. You begin to see errors as information rather than proof of inadequacy. This mindset allows consistent effort without emotional collapse. Another step is reducing comparison. Philosophy teaches that comparing constantly transfers your standards to others. You measure your progress against someone else's timeline. This creates discouragement. Discouragement weakens confidence. Focusing on personal improvement restores perspective. Improvement measured against your past builds authentic belief. Confidence without validation also grows through competence. Philosophy teaches that skill creates natural assurance. When you practice regularly, you gain familiarity. Familiarity reduces uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty produces calmness. Calmness appears as confidence. Skill replaces the need for reassurance because you understand what you are doing. Another factor is managing self-talk. Philosophy teaches that internal language shapes perception. If your thoughts repeatedly doubt your ability, your behavior follows. If your thoughts remain balanced and supportive, your effort stabilizes. Encouraging self-talk is not false positivity, it is constructive focus. You guide your attention toward solutions instead of fear. Confidence also strengthens when you accept responsibility. Philosophy teaches that responsibility creates agency. When you own your outcomes, you stop blaming circumstances. Blame weakens action. Ownership encourages adjustment. Adjustment improves results. Improved results reinforce belief in your capacity to influence your life. Another step is setting realistic goals. Philosophy teaches that overly ambitious expectations create repeated disappointment. Smaller, achievable goals produce consistent success. Each success reinforces trust. Trust accumulates gradually. Over time, small achievements build a stable foundation of confidence. Confidence without validation also grows through independence in decision-making. Philosophy teaches that when you choose based on your values rather than approval, your mind stabilizes. Even if the outcome is imperfect, you know it was your decision. This ownership strengthens self-respect. Self-respect supports confidence. Another element is tolerating discomfort. Philosophy teaches that confidence develops in situations where uncertainty exists. Avoiding discomfort prevents learning. Facing manageable challenges increases capability. Capability strengthens belief. Confidence expands with each challenge overcome. Confidence also increases when you limit overexposure to judgment. Philosophy teaches that constant evaluation creates pressure. Pressure distorts performance. Working privately at times allows growth without distraction. Quiet progress builds internal certainty. Another practice is recognizing progress. Philosophy teaches that awareness of improvement motivates persistence. When you notice how far you have come, your belief strengthens. Ignoring progress keeps confidence fragile. Reflection stabilizes self-perception. Confidence without validation also requires patience. Philosophy teaches that internal belief develops gradually. Expecting immediate certainty creates frustration. Allowing time for growth encourages persistence. Persistence produces results. Results reinforce belief. Finally, building confidence without validation means trusting your effort more than your emotions. Philosophy teaches that emotions fluctuate, but consistent action creates stability. When you rely on your actions as proof of capability, approval becomes optional. Your confidence remains steady because it comes from what you do repeatedly, not what others say occasionally. Building confidence without validation continues when you learn to separate visibility from worth. Philosophy teaches that attention from others is not the same as value. Some actions receive praise simply because they are visible, while meaningful effort often happens quietly. If your confidence depends on being noticed, you will feel uncertain whenever recognition is absent. But when you understand that unseen effort still strengthens your ability, your belief stabilizes. You begin working consistently whether people observe you or not. Quiet discipline becomes your foundation instead of applause. Another important step is learning to tolerate being misunderstood. Philosophy teaches that not everyone will interpret your decisions correctly, and they do not need to. When you require understanding from everyone, you hesitate before acting. Hesitation weakens momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Accepting misunderstanding frees you to act according to purpose instead of explanation. You realize that clarity in your own mind matters more than agreement in others. Confidence also grows when you stop over-celebrating praise. Philosophy teaches that praise can be as destabilizing as criticism if you depend on it. When compliments become emotional fuel, their absence feels like failure. Balanced thinking protects stability. You appreciate encouragement, but you do not rely on it. Your effort remains steady regardless of reaction. Stability strengthens self-belief. Another layer of internal confidence comes from learning independently. Philosophy teaches that discovering solutions yourself deepens understanding. Advice is helpful, but relying entirely on guidance weakens initiative. When you attempt to solve problems personally, you train your reasoning. Each solution increases competence. Competence strengthens certainty. You begin trusting your judgment because you have practiced using it. Confidence without validation also requires consistency in private habits. Philosophy teaches that character forms when no one is observing. If your discipline appears only publicly, it is performance. If it continues privately, it becomes identity. Identity-based confidence does not require reassurance. You know who you are because your behavior repeats even without attention. Another important practice is making decisions calmly. Philosophy teaches that rushed decisions often reflect fear. When you pause and think clearly, your choices align better with your values. Each thoughtful decision reinforces trust in your reasoning. Trust reduces hesitation. Reduced hesitation strengthens confidence. Confidence also develops through accepting uncertainty. Philosophy teaches that certainty rarely exists before action. Waiting for complete assurance prevents movement. Acting with partial knowledge teaches adaptability. Adaptability builds resilience. Resilience stabilizes belief in your capability to handle outcomes. Another step is learning to finish difficult tasks. Philosophy teaches that completion creates psychological strength. When you finish something challenging, your mind records proof of persistence. Persistence matters more than ease. Easy success builds comfort, but difficult completion builds belief. Each finished challenge reinforces confidence. Confidence without validation also increases when you reduce self-doubt conversations. Philosophy teaches that discussing every fear repeatedly strengthens the fear. Reflection is helpful, but excessive reassurance-seeking weakens independence. Quietly acting despite doubt teaches courage. Courage strengthens internal stability. Another aspect is accepting slower progress. Philosophy teaches that real growth often moves gradually. When you compare your timeline to others, impatience appears. Impatience weakens commitment. Commitment strengthens confidence. Trusting gradual improvement preserves motivation. Confidence also grows when you acknowledge your strengths honestly. Philosophy teaches that humility does not require denying capability. Recognizing skills allows you to use them effectively. Ignoring strengths limits effort. Balanced self-awareness supports realistic confidence. Another layer involves reducing perfectionism. Philosophy teaches that perfectionism disguises fear of judgment. When you demand flawless performance, you avoid action. Avoidance weakens experience. Experience builds belief. Allowing imperfect action encourages learning and strengthens confidence. Confidence without validation also depends on emotional regulation. Philosophy teaches that calm responses improve decision-making. When emotions control behavior, results fluctuate. Stable behavior produces reliable outcomes. Reliability strengthens belief in your capability. Another practice is developing patience with learning curves. Philosophy teaches that mastery requires repetition. Early difficulty does not signal inability. Continuing through awkward stages builds skill. Skill reinforces confidence naturally. Finally, building confidence without validation means trusting evidence over opinion. Philosophy teaches that your repeated actions provide stronger proof than anyone's reaction. When you rely on your effort as your reference, approval becomes optional. You continue steadily because your belief comes from experience. Over time, this quiet certainty becomes stronger than any praise or criticism. Chapter 7. Setting Boundaries Without Guilt. Setting boundaries without guilt begins with understanding what a boundary actually is. Philosophy teaches that a boundary is not rejection of others, but protection of direction. Many people believe boundaries hurt relationships, so they avoid them. They say yes when they mean no, agree when they feel uncomfortable, and stay silent when they need space. Over time, this creates inner tension. The problem is not kindness. The problem is unexpressed limits. Without limits, your time and energy become available to everyone, leaving little for your own growth. Guilt appears because you associate boundaries with selfishness. Philosophy teaches that selfishness harms others intentionally, while boundaries prevent harm to yourself. When you constantly sacrifice your needs to maintain peace, resentment quietly builds. Resentment weakens relationships more than honesty ever could. Expressing limits early prevents larger conflict later. Clear communication reduces misunderstanding. Boundaries protect both sides from unrealistic expectations. Another important idea is recognizing responsibility. Philosophy teaches that you are responsible for your actions, not for managing everyone's feelings. When you set a boundary respectfully, another person's disappointment does not mean you acted wrongly. Discomfort is natural when habits change. Accepting temporary discomfort allows long-term balance. Trying to keep everyone comfortable keeps you overwhelmed. Setting boundaries also requires clarity. Philosophy teaches that unclear limits invite confusion. If you hint instead of stating directly, others interpret freely. They continue asking because they do not understand your limit. Directness prevents repeated negotiation. Calm statements reduce tension more effectively than avoidance. Clarity protects your peace. Another step is understanding that saying no is a decision, not a justification. Philosophy teaches that over-explaining weakens boundaries. When you provide long reasons, people debate them. Debate invites pressure. A simple and respectful refusal communicates confidence. Confidence signals stability. Stability discourages repeated requests. Guilt also decreases when you separate kindness from compliance. Philosophy teaches that kindness does not require agreement. You can be respectful while declining. Politeness and firmness can exist together. Boundaries delivered calmly preserve dignity for both people. Tone matters as much as words. Another practice is recognizing patterns. Philosophy teaches that repeated overcommitment leads to exhaustion. If you always accept requests, others assume availability. This assumption becomes expectation. Expectations create pressure. Changing the pattern requires consistency. Each consistent response reinforces your limit. Setting boundaries also protects emotional health. Philosophy teaches that constant emotional availability drains resilience. Listening and supporting others is meaningful, but unlimited support creates imbalance. You need time to recover and reflect. Restored emotional energy improves your ability to help genuinely rather than resentfully. Another important element is timing. Philosophy teaches that boundaries work best when expressed early. Waiting until frustration builds makes communication emotional. Emotional reactions create conflict. Early communication keeps discussions calm. Calm discussions maintain respect. Guilt often comes from fear of rejection. Philosophy teaches that real relationships adapt to honesty. People who respect you adjust to your limits. If a relationship depends on unlimited compliance, it was already unbalanced. Boundaries reveal relationship quality rather than damage it. Another step is practicing consistency. Philosophy teaches that inconsistent boundaries invite testing. If you refuse once but accept later, confusion returns. Consistent responses create predictability. Predictability reduces pressure. Others learn what to expect, and requests adjust naturally. Setting boundaries also improves self-respect. Philosophy teaches that honoring your needs reinforces internal trust. Each time you protect your time, your mind records self-care. Self-care strengthens confidence. Confidence reduces guilt because your decision feels justified internally. Another benefit is increased focus. Philosophy teaches that fewer obligations allow deeper effort. When your schedule aligns with priorities, your attention improves. Improved attention increases quality of work. Quality results build satisfaction. Satisfaction reinforces the value of boundaries. Guilt also fades when you remember long-term impact. Philosophy teaches that short-term discomfort prevents long-term exhaustion. Temporary awkwardness protects sustained well-being. You are choosing stability over momentary approval. Approval fades quickly, balance remains. Finally, setting boundaries without guilt means accepting that limits are part of healthy living. Philosophy teaches that boundaries create structure. Structure supports growth. When you protect your time, energy, and attention, your life becomes intentional. You help others willingly instead of resentfully, and your relationships become clearer and stronger because they are based on respect rather than obligation. Setting boundaries without guilt continues when you realize that silence often replaces honesty when limits are missing. Philosophy teaches that unspoken limits do not disappear, they transform into quiet frustration. You begin avoiding calls, delaying replies, or withdrawing emotionally instead of communicating clearly. Avoidance feels easier in the moment, but creates distance over time. Clear boundaries prevent this slow withdrawal. When you state your availability directly, relationships remain honest rather than strained by guessing. Another important insight is that boundaries protect your commitments. Philosophy teaches that every promise you make requires time and attention. When you accept too many obligations, you cannot honor them fully. Incomplete effort creates stress. Stress weakens reliability. Reliability strengthens trust. By limiting commitments, you increase the quality of what you accept. People respect consistency more than constant availability. Boundaries also teach others how to treat you. Philosophy teaches that behavior becomes expectation through repetition. If you respond immediately every time, immediate response becomes assumed. When you calmly change the pattern, expectations adjust gradually. Others learn your limits through your actions more than your words. Consistency communicates clearly without conflict. Another step is allowing others to handle their responsibilities. Philosophy teaches that helping excessively can prevent growth. When you solve problems that belong to someone else, you carry weight that was not yours. Over time, they rely more, and you feel overwhelmed. Encouraging independence supports both sides. Boundaries create space for personal responsibility. Setting boundaries also requires patience with reactions. Philosophy teaches that change disrupts routine. Some people react with surprise or disappointment when limits appear. Their reaction does not invalidate your decision. Maintaining calm responses stabilizes the conversation. Emotional steadiness prevents escalation. Over time, reactions soften as the new pattern becomes familiar. Another practice is choosing appropriate language. Philosophy teaches that respectful tone prevents defensiveness. Firm words delivered gently reduce conflict. You can decline requests while still acknowledging the other person's situation. Respectful communication preserves relationships while protecting your time. Boundaries also improve mental clarity. Philosophy teaches that constant obligations scatter attention. When your schedule matches your priorities, your thoughts settle. Settled thoughts support concentration. Concentration improves performance. Better performance increases satisfaction. Satisfaction reduces guilt because you see the benefits directly. Another important element is understanding that boundaries evolve. Philosophy teaches that needs change over time. A limit appropriate today may adjust later. Flexibility within structure allows growth. Adjusting boundaries intentionally maintains balance without returning to overload. Setting boundaries also reduces resentment. Philosophy teaches that resentment forms when effort exceeds willingness. When you act from obligation instead of choice, frustration accumulates quietly. Clear limits ensure your actions remain voluntary. Voluntary help feels generous rather than draining. Another step is recognizing the difference between urgency and importance. Philosophy teaches that urgent requests feel immediate, but may not matter long-term. Important activities support your goals. Prioritizing importance over urgency preserves direction. Direction requires consistent attention. Boundaries also support emotional stability. Philosophy teaches that predictable routines reduce anxiety. When you know your time is protected, your mind relaxes. Relaxation improves decision-making. Clear decisions reduce confusion. Stability replaces overwhelm. Another benefit is improved communication. Philosophy teaches that clear expectations prevent repeated misunderstandings. When others know your availability, they plan accordingly. Planning reduces last-minute pressure. Reduced pressure improves relationships. Setting boundaries also teaches self-discipline. Philosophy teaches that discipline includes protecting your commitments. Each time you honor your limits, you strengthen internal consistency. Consistency builds self-trust. Self-trust reduces hesitation. Confidence grows naturally. Another important lesson is that boundaries increase respect. Philosophy teaches that people value what is not endlessly available. Availability without limit feels casual. Limited availability feels intentional. Intentional presence carries weight. Respect grows through clarity. Finally, setting boundaries without guilt means understanding that balance benefits everyone. Philosophy teaches that a person who protects their energy remains helpful longer. Sustainable support is more valuable than exhausted effort. When your actions come from choice instead of pressure, your help becomes meaningful. Your life stays organized, your relationships stay respectful, and your direction stays steady because your time is guided by intention rather than expectation. Chapter 8. Choosing growth over popularity. Choosing growth over popularity begins with understanding that popularity rewards comfort, while growth requires change. Philosophy teaches that people naturally accept what feels familiar. When you grow, you act differently, think differently, and sometimes disagree with what once felt normal. This creates distance from expectations others had of you. Popularity depends on meeting expectations, but growth depends on exceeding them internally. If you choose approval, you repeat old patterns. If you choose growth, you accept temporary discomfort in exchange for lasting progress. Another important truth is that popularity is unstable. Philosophy teaches that opinions shift quickly. Someone admired today may be criticized tomorrow. When your direction depends on approval, your decisions become reactive. You adjust behavior to maintain acceptance rather than improve ability. Improvement requires consistency. Consistency becomes impossible when your focus changes with each reaction. Growth needs stability more than admiration. Choosing growth also requires accepting short-term misunderstanding. Philosophy teaches that improvement often looks strange at first. New habits, routines, or ambitions may confuse people who knew your previous behavior. They interpret change as distance rather than development. Explaining endlessly drains energy. Instead, consistent action communicates more clearly than repeated justification. Over time, results speak louder than explanations. Popularity also encourages imitation. Philosophy teaches that people imitate what receives attention. If you follow what is admired instead of what is meaningful, your direction weakens. You become a reflection of trends rather than an expression of purpose. Purpose requires independence. Independence builds identity. Identity supports steady progress. Another hidden challenge is fear of rejection. Philosophy teaches that rejection feels personal but often reflects difference. When you choose growth, you choose priorities not shared by everyone. Some relationships adjust, others fade. This change is not failure, it is alignment. Alignment reduces inner conflict. Reduced conflict strengthens clarity. Growth also demands delayed reward. Philosophy teaches that meaningful progress appears slowly. Popularity provides immediate feedback through praise or recognition. Immediate reward feels satisfying, but fades quickly. Delayed reward requires patience. Patience develops discipline. Discipline produces lasting results. Choosing growth means valuing long-term benefit over short-term reaction. Another key element is responsibility. Philosophy teaches that growth requires ownership of decisions. When you rely on popularity, you blame audience reaction for your direction. When you rely on growth, you measure actions by improvement. Responsibility increases control. Control improves confidence. Confidence strengthens commitment. Choosing growth also protects authenticity. Philosophy teaches that authenticity aligns behavior with belief. Popularity encourages adjusting personality to fit expectations. Adjustment weakens identity. Acting consistently with values strengthens character. Character sustains progress during difficulty. Another factor is learning tolerance. Philosophy teaches that learning includes mistakes. Popularity discourages mistakes because they risk image. Avoiding mistakes limits experience. Experience builds skill. Skill builds competence. Competence supports confidence. Growth requires permission to be imperfect temporarily. Growth also changes your focus from appearance to ability. Philosophy teaches that appearance seeks validation, while ability seeks improvement. You begin measuring your day by effort rather than reaction. Effort is controllable, reaction is not. Focusing on controllable factors stabilizes motivation. Another important aspect is independence of thought. Philosophy teaches that popular opinions are not always correct. Thinking independently strengthens judgment. Strong judgment improves decisions. Better decisions produce reliable outcomes. Reliable outcomes reinforce self-trust. Choosing growth also improves resilience. Philosophy teaches that relying on praise weakens persistence. When praise stops, effort stops. Growth-based effort continues regardless of recognition. Persistence builds strength. Strength maintains direction during challenges. Another change is deeper satisfaction. Philosophy teaches that popularity brings excitement, but growth brings fulfillment. Excitement depends on attention, fulfillment depends on progress. Progress remains even in silence. Internal satisfaction is more stable than external approval. Growth also influences relationships positively over time. Philosophy teaches that people respect consistent improvement. Initial resistance may occur, but dedication becomes visible. Respect replaces skepticism. Genuine respect lasts longer than casual approval. Finally, choosing growth over popularity means deciding what matters most. Philosophy teaches that approval fades, but ability remains. When you prioritize development, your life gains direction. You stop performing for reaction and start acting with intention. Over time, growth builds confidence, clarity, and stability, creating a path guided by purpose rather than opinion. Choosing growth over popularity continues when you realize that attention is not the same as respect. Philosophy teaches that attention can be loud but shallow, while respect is quiet but lasting. Popularity often brings quick reactions, compliments, and temporary excitement, yet it disappears when trends change. Growth, however, builds ability. Ability earns trust. Trust forms respect. When you focus on improving skills rather than attracting reactions, your foundation becomes stable. You begin valuing progress over applause, and this shift makes your effort consistent. Another lesson is learning to work when no one notices. Philosophy teaches that meaningful progress happens in private repetition. Popularity motivates performance in front of others, but growth demands discipline in solitude. When you train your mind to continue even without recognition, you strengthen internal motivation. Internal motivation does not depend on audience presence. It keeps you moving during quiet periods when results are not visible yet. Choosing growth also changes how you measure success. Philosophy teaches that popularity measures reaction, while growth measures improvement. Reaction fluctuates daily. Improvement accumulates gradually. If you judge your effort by response, you feel unstable. If you judge by progress, you feel grounded. Grounded thinking reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves focus. Focus increases quality of work. Another important shift is patience with slow results. Philosophy teaches that deep change requires time. Popular paths promise quick visibility but little development. Growth paths feel slow because they strengthen fundamentals. Fundamentals create long-term reliability. Reliable effort eventually produces stronger outcomes than quick recognition. Growth also requires comfort with quiet seasons. Philosophy teaches that periods without feedback test commitment. Many abandon effort during silence because they interpret it as failure. Silence often means preparation. Continued effort during quiet times builds resilience. Resilience stabilizes confidence. Another aspect is reducing comparison with public image. Philosophy teaches that public image hides process. You see results without seeing preparation. This illusion creates pressure. Pressure weakens motivation. Understanding that growth includes unseen work restores realistic expectations. Choosing growth also improves decision-making. Philosophy teaches that popularity encourages safe choices. Growth encourages learning choices. Learning choices expand experience. Expanded experience improves judgment. Improved judgment strengthens independence. Another change appears in communication. Philosophy teaches that popularity seeks approval in conversation. Growth seeks clarity. You speak less to impress and more to understand. Understanding strengthens relationships. Strong relationships support progress. Growth also develops deeper confidence. Philosophy teaches that confidence based on skill does not depend on reaction. Each improvement provides evidence of capability. Evidence stabilizes belief. Stable belief persists during criticism. Another lesson is accepting fewer but stronger connections. Philosophy teaches that popularity expands network size, while growth deepens connection quality. Meaningful relationships support honesty. Honest feedback improves performance. Performance strengthens self-trust. Choosing growth also shifts focus toward learning continuously. Philosophy teaches that a learning mindset keeps identity flexible. Flexibility allows adaptation. Adaptation sustains relevance. Sustained relevance maintains progress. Another important element is resisting distraction. Philosophy teaches that popularity encourages constant visibility. Visibility consumes time. Growth requires concentration. Concentration produces mastery. Mastery creates lasting results. Growth also improves emotional balance. Philosophy teaches that reliance on reactions creates emotional highs and lows. Reliance on effort creates steadiness. Steadiness supports clear thinking. Clear thinking supports consistent action. Another effect is improved self-respect. Philosophy teaches that honoring your priorities reinforces internal trust. Trust reduces doubt. Reduced doubt strengthens direction. Direction guides daily decisions. Finally, choosing growth over popularity means deciding what legacy you want. Philosophy teaches that reactions fade quickly, but developed ability remains useful. When you build yourself instead of your image, your progress continues regardless of attention. Over time, the satisfaction of improvement replaces the need for approval, and your path becomes guided by purpose rather than reaction. Chapter 9. Replacing comparison with self-improvement. Replacing comparison with self-improvement begins with understanding what comparison really does to the mind. Philosophy teaches that comparison redirects attention outward instead of inward. When you constantly measure yourself against others, your focus leaves your own progress and attaches to someone else's timeline. You stop asking how you can grow today and start asking why you are not already there. This shift weakens motivation. Instead of action, you feel pressure. Pressure without direction creates frustration. Frustration leads to hesitation, and hesitation slows growth. Comparison also distorts reality. Philosophy teaches that you compare your daily struggles to someone else's visible results. You see their achievements, but not their preparation, mistakes, or persistence. This incomplete information makes your effort feel insufficient. Your mind interprets distance as inability rather than time difference. When you recognize that progress includes unseen work, your expectations become realistic. Realistic expectations restore patience. Another effect of comparison is emotional instability. Philosophy teaches that when your mood depends on someone else's success, you lose emotional control. You feel discouraged when others advance and relieved when they fail. These reactions do not help your development. They consume mental energy that could support improvement. Emotional balance returns when your focus shifts back to your own actions. Replacing comparison requires redefining competition. Philosophy teaches that your real competitor is your previous self. Yesterday's habits, skills, and discipline become your reference point. Each small improvement becomes meaningful because it reflects personal growth. This perspective makes progress measurable. Measurable progress strengthens motivation. Another step is appreciating individuality. Philosophy teaches that people grow at different speeds because their circumstances differ. Different experiences produce different starting points. When you accept this, you stop forcing identical outcomes. You begin working according to your own capacity. Working within your context increases consistency. Self-improvement also encourages daily practice. Philosophy teaches that repeated effort creates change gradually. Instead of checking others' results, you evaluate your daily habits. You improve one skill, one routine, or one mindset each day. These small adjustments accumulate. Accumulation becomes transformation over time. Another important principle is gratitude. Philosophy teaches that gratitude stabilizes perception. When you notice what you already possess, skills, opportunities, or lessons, you reduce dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction weakens effort. Appreciation strengthens commitment. Commitment supports persistence. Replacing comparison also requires limiting exposure to constant evaluation. Philosophy teaches that constant monitoring of others distracts focus. When your attention remains on your own tasks, concentration improves. Improved concentration increases productivity. Productivity produces results. Another change is learning from others without measuring yourself against them. Philosophy teaches that inspiration differs from comparison. Inspiration studies methods. Comparison judges worth. Studying how someone succeeded can guide your process. Judging yourself against their outcome weakens confidence. Self-improvement also builds self-trust. Philosophy teaches that each improvement proves capability. Capability reduces insecurity. Reduced insecurity decreases the urge to compare. Confidence grows from evidence of progress rather than external ranking. Another aspect is patience with setbacks. Philosophy teaches that growth includes mistakes. Comparison interprets mistakes as inferiority. Self-improvement interprets mistakes as instruction. Instruction improves skill. Skill strengthens belief. Replacing comparison also changes motivation. Philosophy teaches that external ranking motivates briefly. Internal purpose motivates consistently. When your goal becomes better performance rather than better appearance, effort becomes sustainable. Sustainability leads to long-term achievement. Another step is tracking progress. Philosophy teaches that recording small improvements makes growth visible. Visible growth encourages persistence. Persistence deepens skill. Skill reduces doubt. Self-improvement also improves mental peace. Philosophy teaches that constant comparison creates restlessness. Restlessness prevents focus. Focus produces meaningful work. Meaningful work provides satisfaction. Finally, replacing comparison with self-improvement means reclaiming control of your direction. Philosophy teaches that your life moves according to your actions, not others' outcomes. When you invest energy in improving yourself daily, you move steadily forward. Over time, your progress becomes undeniable because it is built on consistent effort rather than temporary measurement. Replacing comparison with self-improvement continues when you recognize how easily the mind forgets its own progress. Philosophy teaches that the brain notices what is missing faster than what is growing. You remember where you still struggle, but you overlook how far you have come. Because of this, comparison feels natural. You see someone ahead and assume you are behind, even though your current ability once felt impossible. When you begin recording your own improvements, your perception changes. You stop measuring distance from others and start measuring distance from your past. That shift alone restores motivation. Another important change is understanding that comparison steals direction. Philosophy teaches that the moment you copy someone's path without reflection, you also copy their priorities. Their goals may not match your values. When you chase an outcome that does not belong to you, effort feels heavy. You work hard but feel empty. Self-improvement solves this by asking a simple question: what skill, habit, or quality would improve your life today? The answer focuses your action. Focused action strengthens purpose. Self-improvement also trains attention. Philosophy teaches that attention determines growth. What you repeatedly notice becomes what you develop. If you notice others constantly, you develop insecurity. If you notice your practice, you develop ability. Each day, you deliberately observe your effort. Your mind learns to value progress over appearance. This change stabilizes confidence because progress depends on behavior, not opinion. Another step is replacing envy with curiosity. Philosophy teaches that envy asks, "Why do they have it?" while curiosity asks, "What can I learn from it?" Curiosity creates movement. You analyze methods, study discipline, and adopt useful habits. Learning transforms admiration into improvement. Instead of feeling smaller, you become stronger because every example becomes a lesson. Self-improvement also benefits from routine. Philosophy teaches that consistent routines remove emotional dependence. When you improve at a fixed time daily, you stop waiting for motivation. Motivation becomes a result, not a requirement. Repetition builds familiarity. Familiarity builds skill. Skill creates belief in your capability. Belief strengthens identity. Another important idea is accepting uneven progress. Philosophy teaches that improvement rarely moves in a straight line. Some days feel productive, others slow. Comparison interprets slow days as failure. Self-improvement interprets them as part of learning. Understanding this prevents discouragement. You continue steadily because temporary difficulty no longer defines your direction. Self-improvement also changes how you interpret success around you. Philosophy teaches that others' progress is not evidence of your inadequacy. It is evidence that progress is possible. When you adopt this mindset, someone else's achievement motivates you instead of discouraging you. Motivation fuels effort. Effort creates results. Another step is simplifying goals. Philosophy teaches that complex ambitions overwhelm action. Comparison pushes you toward big outcomes quickly. Self-improvement returns you to manageable steps. You focus on one improvement at a time. Small wins accumulate. Accumulation builds confidence because each success is repeatable. Self-improvement also encourages reflection. Philosophy teaches that reflection turns experience into wisdom. At the end of each day, you evaluate what worked and what did not. Adjustments follow. Adjustment improves efficiency. Efficiency increases progress without increasing stress. Another benefit is emotional stability. Philosophy teaches that comparison ties emotion to external events. Self-improvement ties emotion to effort. Effort remains under your control. Control reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves focus. Self-improvement also strengthens patience. Philosophy teaches that meaningful change requires repetition. When you value repetition, you stop seeking instant results. Patience sustains effort. Sustained effort builds mastery. Another step is valuing depth over speed. Philosophy teaches that shallow learning brings quick excitement but weak skill. Deep learning feels slow but produces lasting ability. When you choose depth, you build competence that cannot be taken away by trends or opinions. Self-improvement also improves self-respect. Philosophy teaches that honoring your own progress builds internal approval. Internal approval replaces the need for constant reassurance. You begin trusting your effort rather than waiting for recognition. Another change is clearer decision-making. Philosophy teaches that when your reference point is personal improvement, choices become simpler. You ask whether an action improves you, not whether it impresses others. This clarity prevents distraction. Finally, replacing comparison with self-improvement means reclaiming your attention permanently. Philosophy teaches that your life grows where your effort goes. When effort stays directed inward toward growth, your path becomes steady. You stop reacting to others' journeys and start building your own, one deliberate improvement at a time. Chapter 10. Living according to your own standards. Living according to your own standards begins with defining what a standard actually is. Philosophy teaches that a standard is a personal rule you follow, whether anyone is watching or not. Many people live by reactions instead of standards. They act one way when observed and another when alone. This inconsistency weakens identity because behavior changes with circumstance. When you decide clear principles how you work, speak, and treat your time, you create stability. Stability reduces confusion. You no longer negotiate with every situation. Your standards guide your decisions automatically. Another important step is understanding the difference between preference and principle. Philosophy teaches that preferences change easily, but principles remain steady. If your behavior follows mood, motivation controls you. If it follows principles, direction controls you. For example, you may not feel motivated daily, but a standard of discipline keeps you acting. Acting consistently produces results. Results reinforce belief. Belief strengthens commitment. Living by your standards also reduces pressure from opinion. Philosophy teaches that external judgment feels heavy when internal rules are unclear. Without personal guidelines, you rely on others to define what is correct. Their opinions conflict, creating confusion. When your standards are defined, opinions become information instead of authority. You listen calmly, but decide independently. Independence strengthens confidence. Another benefit is improved decision-making. Philosophy teaches that clear standards shorten hesitation. Instead of debating endlessly, you compare each choice to your principles. If it aligns, you act. If not, you decline. This clarity conserves mental energy. Conserved energy improves focus. Focus increases effectiveness. Your standards also shape habits. Philosophy teaches that repeated behavior forms routine. When your standard includes punctuality, preparation, or honesty, you practice it daily. Practice builds reliability. Reliability becomes reputation. Reputation supports opportunities. Opportunities strengthen progress. Living according to your standards also protects integrity. Philosophy teaches that integrity is alignment between belief and action. When actions match values, inner conflict disappears. Without conflict, your mind feels calm. Calmness improves concentration. Concentration improves performance. Another important aspect is resilience. Philosophy teaches that standards remain during difficulty. When challenges appear, mood fluctuates. Standards do not. They provide direction when emotion is uncertain. Acting according to principles during hardship strengthens character. Character stabilizes identity. Standards also improve relationships. Philosophy teaches that predictable behavior builds trust. When others know your values, they understand your decisions. Clear expectations reduce misunderstanding. Respect increases because your actions are consistent rather than reactive. Another step is accountability. Philosophy teaches that living by your standards means evaluating yourself honestly. You correct mistakes without waiting for external criticism. Self-correction encourages growth. Growth improves capability. Capability strengthens self-trust. Living by your standards also enhances productivity. Philosophy teaches that disciplined routines reduce wasted time. You spend less effort deciding and more effort doing. Consistent effort produces measurable progress. Progress motivates further effort. Another benefit is emotional stability. Philosophy teaches that when you measure yourself against your own rules, emotional reactions become calmer. Praise does not inflate you excessively, and criticism does not collapse you instantly. Your reference point remains internal. Internal reference creates balance. Standards also prevent overcommitment. Philosophy teaches that clear priorities guide acceptance of obligations. You decline requests that conflict with your values. This protects energy. Protected energy improves performance in chosen areas. Another element is personal growth. Philosophy teaches that standards evolve with experience. You refine them as you learn. Growth remains intentional because your direction adapts consciously rather than randomly. Living according to your standards also strengthens discipline. Philosophy teaches that discipline is repeated action aligned with intention. Each time you honor your principles, you reinforce self-trust. Self-trust reduces doubt. Reduced doubt encourages initiative. Finally, living according to your own standards means you become guided rather than influenced. Philosophy teaches that direction comes from commitment to chosen values. When your actions reflect your principles daily, your life becomes coherent. Decisions feel simpler, effort feels meaningful, and your progress becomes steady because your path is shaped by intention rather than reaction. Living according to your own standards continues when you realize that clarity simplifies life. Philosophy teaches that confusion often comes from trying to satisfy too many expectations at once. When you know what you stand for, choices become easier. You no longer analyze every option endlessly because your principles act as a filter. Some opportunities may look attractive but do not align with your direction. Letting them pass does not feel like loss. It feels like focus. Focus preserves energy and strengthens progress. Another important lesson is learning to tolerate disagreement. Philosophy teaches that personal standards naturally differ from public opinion. When you act differently from expectation, some people question your decisions. If you rely on approval, you will adjust your standards repeatedly. But when your rules are clear, disagreement becomes manageable. You listen respectfully without changing your direction unnecessarily. Stability in your actions builds confidence in your judgment. Living by your standards also strengthens self-discipline. Philosophy teaches that discipline is easier when decisions are predetermined. If your standard says you work during a certain time, you do not debate with yourself each day. Reduced debate conserves mental energy. Conserved energy supports consistency. Consistency produces measurable improvement. Another effect is reduced procrastination. Philosophy teaches that hesitation often comes from uncertainty. Without standards, you negotiate internally before every task. With standards, action becomes automatic. Automatic action reduces delay. Less delay increases productivity. Productivity strengthens belief in your reliability. Your standards also protect your attention. Philosophy teaches that many distractions appear important temporarily. Clear priorities help you decline them. When you decline without hesitation, you prevent scattered effort. Concentrated effort improves results. Results reinforce commitment. Another benefit is emotional steadiness. Philosophy teaches that internal rules stabilize reactions. When you judge your day by your effort rather than by outcomes, your mood becomes calmer. Outcomes fluctuate, but effort remains controllable. Measuring yourself by effort creates balance. Balanced thinking prevents discouragement. Living according to your own standards also improves courage. Philosophy teaches that courage is acting according to belief, despite discomfort. Each time you follow your principles in a difficult moment, you strengthen inner confidence. Confidence accumulates gradually. Gradual accumulation becomes resilience. Another step is respecting your own time. Philosophy teaches that time management begins with value recognition. When your standards include protecting time for meaningful work, you treat it carefully. You plan intentionally and avoid unnecessary delay. Intentional planning improves performance. Your standards also reduce regret. Philosophy teaches that regret often comes from acting against your values. When you follow your principles, even imperfect outcomes feel acceptable because your effort was honest. Honest effort creates peace. Peace strengthens focus. Another important idea is adaptability within structure. Philosophy teaches that standards guide direction but allow learning. When new information appears, you refine your approach without abandoning your principles. Flexibility improves decision quality. Decision quality enhances results. Living by your standards also improves communication. Philosophy teaches that clarity in values makes explanation simple. You express your choices calmly because you understand them. Clear communication prevents conflict. Prevented conflict protects relationships. Another effect is independence of mood. Philosophy teaches that emotional states fluctuate daily. If your actions depend on mood, productivity declines. If your actions depend on standards, progress continues. Progress becomes reliable regardless of feeling. Your standards also strengthen accountability. Philosophy teaches that self-evaluation builds growth. When you review your actions honestly, you correct mistakes quickly. Quick correction improves performance. Performance builds trust in yourself. Another benefit is long-term consistency. Philosophy teaches that repeated alignment with values shapes character. Character becomes recognizable. Others begin to rely on your steadiness. Reliability creates respect naturally without seeking it. Finally, living according to your own standards means becoming guided by intention rather than reaction. Philosophy teaches that a clear inner compass prevents confusion. When you know what matters to you, you act with direction. Over time, your life feels purposeful because your actions consistently reflect who you chose to be, not who others expected you to become. Living according to your own standards deepens when you realize that consistency builds identity more than intensity. Philosophy teaches that a single burst of motivation changes little, but repeated aligned action changes character. When you follow your principles daily, even in small ways, your mind stops questioning who you are. Doubt fades because your behavior provides proof. Proof stabilizes belief. Belief strengthens direction. You begin trusting yourself not because of emotion, but because of evidence. Another insight is that standards simplify decision fatigue. Philosophy teaches that constant decision-making exhausts attention. When your values are clear, many choices disappear. You already know what you will accept and what you will decline. This removes internal argument. With fewer mental debates, your energy remains available for meaningful work. Clear rules reduce unnecessary thinking and increase productive effort. Living by your standards also protects you from impulse. Philosophy teaches that impulse is strongest when guidance is weak. In moments of pressure or temptation, you fall back on your internal rules. Those rules act like a barrier between reaction and action. Instead of acting emotionally, you respond intentionally. Intentional responses prevent regret. Prevented regret preserves confidence. Another benefit is the ability to handle success wisely. Philosophy teaches that success can distract as easily as failure discourages. When recognition appears, standards keep behavior steady. You continue practicing discipline rather than relaxing into comfort. Stability during success preserves progress. Progress maintained over time becomes mastery. Your standards also reduce the need for constant reassurance. Philosophy teaches that reassurance fills the gap where internal certainty is missing. When your behavior matches your values, certainty develops naturally. You do not need to ask others repeatedly if you are doing enough. You measure yourself by your effort. This internal measurement strengthens independence. Another important aspect is persistence during boredom. Philosophy teaches that growth includes repetitive effort. Many abandon progress not because it is difficult, but because it becomes routine. Standards keep you active even when excitement fades. Continuing through ordinary days produces extraordinary results. Discipline replaces emotional dependence. Living according to your own standards also improves focus under pressure. Philosophy teaches that stressful situations reveal preparation. When challenges appear, you rely on practiced habits. Those habits come from repeated alignment with your principles. Preparation reduces panic. Calm thinking leads to better decisions. Another effect is increased patience with outcomes. Philosophy teaches that impatience arises when results become your only measure. Standards shift attention to process. When you honor the process daily, waiting becomes easier. You trust that steady effort leads somewhere meaningful. This patience reduces anxiety and supports long-term progress. Your standards also strengthen reliability in others' eyes. Philosophy teaches that people trust predictable behavior. When your actions align consistently with your principles, others understand what to expect. Predictability builds credibility. Credibility creates opportunities. Opportunities support growth. Another lesson is managing criticism calmly. Philosophy teaches that criticism affects you less when you know your intentions are clear. You evaluate feedback without emotional collapse. Constructive feedback helps improvement, while irrelevant feedback is released. This balance keeps your confidence stable. Living by your standards also clarifies priorities. Philosophy teaches that competing desires create confusion. When your values are defined, you rank choices easily. You give time to what matters most. Clear priorities prevent wasted effort. Directed effort produces meaningful results. Another important change is increased self-respect. Philosophy teaches that self-respect grows from honoring your commitments. Each time you follow your principles, your mind recognizes reliability. Reliability strengthens trust in yourself. Trust in yourself strengthens confidence naturally. Your standards also improve resilience after mistakes. Philosophy teaches that mistakes are inevitable. When they occur, your principles guide correction. Instead of quitting, you adjust your behavior while keeping your direction. Adjustment maintains momentum. Momentum supports recovery. Another benefit is inner peace. Philosophy teaches that internal conflict drains mental energy. When your actions match your beliefs, conflict disappears. Without conflict, your thoughts become clearer. Clear thinking improves performance and emotional balance. Finally, living according to your own standards means becoming steady in an unpredictable world. Philosophy teaches that circumstances change, opinions change, and outcomes change, but principles can remain constant. When your direction is anchored in your values, you adapt without losing yourself. Over time, this steadiness builds a life guided by intention, strengthened by discipline, and sustained by clarity rather than reaction. Living according to your own standards grows stronger when you understand that direction comes from repetition, not occasional effort. Philosophy teaches that identity is not declared once, it is practiced daily. Every morning you choose either convenience or commitment. When you repeatedly choose your principles over comfort, your behavior becomes predictable to yourself. Predictability removes inner hesitation. Without hesitation, you act faster and more confidently. Confidence develops not from emotion, but from familiarity with your own discipline. Another important realization is that standards protect you from emotional decisions. Philosophy teaches that emotions fluctuate quickly. One moment you feel motivated, another moment discouraged. If your actions depend on feelings, progress becomes inconsistent. Standards act as a stable guide. Even when your mood changes, your actions remain steady. This steadiness allows long-term projects to continue despite temporary emotional states. Living by your standards also changes how you view obstacles. Philosophy teaches that difficulty is not a signal to stop, but a test of commitment. When challenges appear, your principles remind you why you began. Purpose strengthens persistence. Persistence builds capability. Capability reinforces belief in your direction. Obstacles become checkpoints instead of barriers. Another effect is reduced distraction. Philosophy teaches that distraction grows where priorities are unclear. When your standards define what matters, unnecessary activities lose appeal. You decline them calmly because they conflict with your direction. Fewer distractions allow deeper concentration. Deep concentration improves the quality of your effort. Your standards also strengthen accountability in private moments. Philosophy teaches that character reveals itself when no one is present. Acting with integrity privately builds trust within yourself. This internal trust supports confidence during public situations. You feel stable because your behavior is consistent everywhere. Another lesson is learning patience with gradual progress. Philosophy teaches that meaningful results appear after sustained effort. When you focus on living your standards daily, you stop demanding immediate success. You trust accumulation. Small improvements gather quietly until they become visible change. Living according to your own standards also improves resilience against pressure. Philosophy teaches that social pressure loses strength when your values are clear. You do not reject others harshly, you simply follow your priorities. Calm firmness prevents conflict while preserving direction. Others learn your consistency through experience. Another benefit is increased mental clarity. Philosophy teaches that internal conflict consumes attention. When your actions match your beliefs, your mind stops debating with itself. Clear thinking improves problem solving. Better solutions improve outcomes. Improved outcomes reinforce your standards. Your standards also guide recovery after mistakes. Philosophy teaches that errors are corrected faster when principles exist. Instead of abandoning effort, you adjust behavior and continue. Consistency remains intact. Momentum continues. Progress resumes without long interruption. Another important change is respect for your own effort. Philosophy teaches that valuing your work encourages persistence. When you follow your standards, you recognize the seriousness of your commitment. This recognition motivates you to maintain discipline even when results are slow. Living by your standards also strengthens decision confidence. Philosophy teaches that repeated aligned choices train intuition. Over time, decisions require less doubt because you trust your judgment. Trust reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves performance under pressure. Another effect is emotional independence. Philosophy teaches that relying on your principles reduces sensitivity to approval. Praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism becomes informative but not destructive. Your mood stabilizes because it depends on effort rather than reaction. Your standards also improve time management. Philosophy teaches that planned routines reduce wasted effort. When you schedule according to priorities, your day becomes organized. Organization reduces stress. Reduced stress supports sustained focus. Another lesson is courage in difficult moments. Philosophy teaches that courage is acting according to belief despite discomfort. Each time you maintain your standards under pressure, your confidence grows. You realize you can handle resistance without abandoning your direction. Finally, living according to your own standards means shaping your life intentionally. Philosophy teaches that habits guided by values create predictable progress. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you respond with purpose. Over time, your consistency builds a stable path where your actions reflect your principles and your results reflect your commitment. In the end, your life moves in the direction of your focus. If your attention is always on what others think, your path will always feel uncertain. But the moment your focus returns to your own actions, your goals, and your growth, everything becomes clearer. You stop wasting energy on opinions you cannot control. You stop trying to please everyone. And you begin building something real. Not everyone will understand you, and they don't need to. Peace comes when you accept that your purpose is not to satisfy every expectation, but to live honestly with yourself. Confidence grows when your decisions come from your values instead of reactions to others. Remember this: people who are busy building their life don't have time to constantly judge yours. Focus on improving, learning, and moving forward. When you truly focus on yourself, the noise fades, your mind settles, and your direction strengthens.